John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. His NFL column is posted at 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got a couple of them regarding the NFL, one on Jerry Jones. Check that out. And also, as he writes, following last night's Thursday night game, that it is time for the Thursday night game to go. And we'll dive into that, John, because we got a lot of reaction on it today. We have a poll question up revolving that column today. Are the listeners ready for the Thursday night football to go away? And right now, I think we had last time we updated the poll, Pete Thompson, 67% are on board with you, man. They agree that Thursday night football has lived a good solid life, but it's maybe time to pull the plug on that thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who likes it. The players hate it. The coaches don't like it. Now you have Sean McManus from CBS saying it's affecting ratings. So even people paying for it are starting to question and have buyer's remorse. And then you have the impact, which I think is the biggest deal for the NFL long term, the safety impact, because guys were going down a lot yesterday. Obviously, Richard Sherman with the torn Achilles, and the Cardinals lost 3 different players to what could be season-ending injuries. Bryant certainly with a torn ACL, dislocated knee for DJ Humphries. Now, I'm not sure you can have a direct causal connection to say the short week leads to injuries. But for a league that's so concerned over safety issues, it just doesn't make sense to push guys right back on the field so quickly. So from that standpoint, I think it's another example of the NFL not sort of taking those not thinking 2 steps ahead.
John, would you? I talked about earlier that one of the problems with the Thursday night game is you're on prime time standalone. You want to put your best product, your best foot forward. That's not even close to their best product, their best foot forward. You would never put the main event as the dark match and put the 2 jobbers on the top of the card. You put your 2 superstars in the main event. They're not putting superstars in the main event. They're putting the dark match on standalone television.
Well, anytime you have one game, obviously you can't have, say, your 2 best teams. You can't have the Eagles versus the Patriots every week. So, but occasionally you have good matchups. But from my perspective,
even good matchups, though, those two, even if you're playing the 2 best teams, they're not at their best.
Exactly, and that's the problem because there's no preparation for that week. So even if you have 2 good teams out there, you're not going to be getting the product you typically get when they've had a traditional week to prepare. I mean, look at how an average NFL week is set up. Your first practice is on Wednesday. Your major practices are on Wednesday and Thursday. Then you kind of scale back things on Friday. When you're playing on Thursday night, you get 1 practice in. It obviously can't be as involved as a typical Wednesday practice. So you're basically going in to play an NFL game with no preparation. It just doesn't make sense on so many levels, but it comes down to money, and that's why I bring up Sean McManus, because he's changed his tune. Originally, when he got in to the Thursday night football business, he kind of said, no matter how much product the NFL puts out there, people want it. And now he's sort of come back to the realization that that's not necessarily true, and maybe it is oversaturated. But the problem is guys like that keep giving them checks. And as long as one of them exists, and it only takes one, they're not going to get rid of it because it is about making money. But I think from the league's perspective, they should realize this is not good for their sport for a whole host of reasons that we just ran down. The most important for them, though, is the safety issue, because you're talking out of both sides of your mouth when you're saying we're very concerned about this and they've changed so many rules. And, oh, by the way, we're going to push these guys back on the field on Thursday. Every single week there's going to be 2 teams that got to do that. And veteran players, that's really difficult.
John, I would say, this is just like the overall part of football. We're asking people, do you agree or disagree with your article that the Thursday Night Football game needs to go? A lot of people saying they're agreeing. The game's not the same. It's a standalone game. You're not putting your best product out there. Would you surmise that it's fair to say that the game is not as entertaining flatly based on the safety precautions they have put in to the game, and the fans as consumers, we don't like them? They're looking out for the players' safety, and that is a big reason why the game is not as entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that for years. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. That's just the reality of it. I mean, if you think back to the days of videotapes, and you think about all those NFL or released videos of hard hits and things of that nature and how popular they were, well, you're trying to take them out of the game. And you know, there's some people who feel badly about liking things like that, and it could be boxing has dealt with the same thing. When you think about the punishment those guys take, even hockey fights, they've tried to get that out of the game as much as possible. I've always said we need to get to a point in this country, and I don't know if we're capable of getting there, that you have to stipulate that this is a very dangerous game. Everybody knows it, and if you want to play it, you got to sign off sort of a waiver and stipulate that, and go back to traditional football if you want the same entertaining product. What is out there today is not as entertaining for a number of reasons. That's one of them. The over-legislation of the game is another. But that is also tends to be at least partially related to safety issues. But you have a large contingency of people in this country who, for whatever reason, want to do everything possible to take chance and injury out of this game. And my point to that is that's fine, but then stop playing football. Because the only way to stop concussions in professional football is to stop playing. That's the only way.
So, John, if the league cares the most about the bottom line, does the money that they are making and potentially can make off of Thursday night football games outweigh the declining ratings and all the rash of injuries?
Yeah, to them, yes, certainly. I mean, as long as they get that check, they're going to keep going. And that's why I say the most powerful people talk, we always say, most people think it's Roger Goodell. It's not. Even other people who kind of understand how the league works will say it's the 32 owners and the more powerful ones like Jerry Jones. It's not. The most powerful people in this game are the TV executives that hand them billions of dollars because they're the golden goose. They control this game. They do. If they decided tomorrow that we are no longer going to fund this league, the NFL would cease to exist at this level. It might be a minor sport on a obviously when you take away, if you think about this industry as a whole, guys, it makes $13 billion per year about is where they are. Over half of that comes from television. So if you take that away, it totally destroys the sport. And by the way, the NFL is not alone. That's everything. Yeah. Baseball, basketball.
I said, John, essentially, the NFL with these safety regulations, look, they got to do it. They're trying to watch out for the players, okay? It's inhumane, some of the things that I guess before that were happening. But if it wasn't for gambling and fantasy football, you'd essentially have hockey.
I don't know about that because people still do enjoy the sport. And I think there's a whole generation of fans who don't understand, to be honest, that the product used to be better because they grew up on this product. And the NFL was always popular, and that's the only thing they know. Now, I admit I'm heavily in. If you're an adult, you should be able to make a decision. If you want to box for a living, you should be able to box. If you want to play football for a living, you should be able to play football. But you have to understand there's a risk reward. And if you want to go sit at a desk and write for a living like me, you're probably not as apt to get hurt as if you're playing football. You're also not going to get paid as much. That's sort of the risk and the reward. And they have the right as adults to do that. So that's where I stand on the safety issue. But if you look at Thursday Night Football as a whole and you say everything we just said, the bottom line is, even though the ratings are down, from a TV programmer's perspective, yeah, they're down, but they're still better than everything else. So they haven't gotten to that point where they're going to say, you know what, this isn't worth it for us, because if they put something else on, their ratings tank far worse, and they get less advertising revenue. And so until we get to that point where these executives who hold this power say, you know what, we don't want this. We don't want this on Thursday. If they say that, it goes away tomorrow. They haven't said that to this point.
John, you talked about the only way to not get, say, a concussion, for example, is not to play. Well, that concussion word makes me think about last night with Russell Wilson. There was an incident in the game where he got a hit from Carlos Dansby. Are the Seahawks looking at some trouble here because of the way things were handled last night? Because I saw a lot of that on social media about the hit that Russell Wilson took and how it was handled.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be in trouble because, remember, the NFL has gone through this process where they have independent spotters who are supposed to be doing this and alerting people that, hey, somebody's got to be looked at, that have nothing to do with the Seahawks. So the NFL has, said they're going to investigate how it was handled, and that's code for we'll rubber stamp it and move on, and hopefully everybody forgets about it. But I don't think there's any question that it's very difficult, and there are different standards for different players. And if Russell Wilson wants to stay on the field, he's a superstar. He's a quarterback. He's going to be given every opportunity to stay on the field. But you can say that's horrible, and maybe it is to some people. But you also have the other end of the spectrum that a lot of players, and I mean a lot of players, try to hide concussion symptoms to stay in the game because they want to play. The problem for the league has always been the realization that 25-year-olds think differently than 55-year-olds. And when you're 25, you say, hey, I want to go win this football game. I want to go out there. And when you're 55 and you're having issues, you think differently. And to be honest, I don't know how you solve that problem.
Let me go back to the NFL ratings and how many people are watching, and not necessarily just Thursday Night Football, but NFL ratings in general. Of course, last year at this time, there was a presidential election going on, so when that ended, there was a post-election bounce where the ratings went up. Those final 8 weeks of the regular season this year, there is no presidential election. There probably isn't going to be a bounce. The numbers have been down. What do you think the NFL can do to try and stem the bleeding or stop the bleeding, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they can do that much because I think part of it is just the nature of television as a whole, and it's fractured, and there's so many other options, and there's streaming services and over-the-top services. And remember, people, you have to frame it in context. So when you say the NFL's down 8% or whatever it is at this point, you have to look at television as a whole, and that's far greater. I mean, the eroding television ratings in prime time for all the major networks are far greater than that. So from their perspective, the NFL has always been the one that's doing better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to compare it to its own ratings, obviously it's disappointing. But when you add that context to it, it's not quite as disappointing. And Pete, you hit the nail on the head. As we head down the stretch of the season, ratings always increase because you have bigger games with bigger stakes. And they will increase again this season.
Right.
They always do.
And they can flex games in.
Yeah, which they haven't done yet this year. John, if I'm CBS and I'm Fox, do I not go to the NFL and say, hey, guys, what the heck are you thinking with this Red Zone channel?
Yeah, I mean, that in some ways it's cannibalizing the product, and it really is difficult because they want to serve two masters, and they want to take advantage of fantasy football people who've created sort of this billion-dollar industry in a different way. While at the same time, you're sort of taking away and creating a new type of viewer who doesn't watch full football games. And can't sit for 3 hours to watch two teams. And that's, hey, everybody is struggling. And again, this goes far beyond football. Everybody is struggling to figure out how to monetize streaming video, how to monetize a new viewer, a younger viewer who watches things in a different format. They don't sit in front of a television. They'll watch things on their phone or their iPad. And everybody's trying to figure it out. And nobody has figured it out, including the NFL. But from the red zone part of it, you're taking away from one group to give to another group. And it's been wildly successful on one hand, and I think it's taken away from another part of the product.
Which is, it's bizarre because, to my knowledge, and you probably would know this better than I, but the NFL, I mean, there's no advertising. They're not making any money off the red zone, right?
No, well, they're making money off fantasy football and people's obsession with that. And you guys know me well enough that I don't understand people's obsession with that. I really don't. I don't know why they enjoy it. So that one is difficult for me to answer.
I'll tell you why they enjoy it. Because a game last night that otherwise you would not have any interest in gave you interest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're that invested in your team, I guess that could fuel some interest. But I don't see the ratings going up. But I do see a core group of people spending a lot of money on fantasy sports. So from their perspective, with the NFL, it's like most businesses, not most, it's like all businesses. It's you follow the money. If they can make money out of something, they're going to do it. That's why they have Thursday Night Football. That's why they have the Red Zone. That's why they push fantasy football. I mean, if there's a way to monetize an individual, they're going to try and do it.
John McMullen, for more on this conversation, head out to the website, 973ESPN.com, where John says Thursday Night Football must go. And so far, you guys voting on Twitter seemingly agree with John that you've had enough of the Thursday Night Football game. Now, look, there are people out there that enjoy a football game regardless of who it is. Some of those people, might have a wager on the game that could play into why they like the game, or you just like watching two teams that you have no interest in. You just love the product. But 69% agree that it's time for football, Thursday Night Football, anyway, to go away. That means 31% of you really are still into the Thursday Night Football game. John McMullen at JF McMullen on Twitter. No Eagles game this week. Obviously, the Eagles with the bye will get back into the Birds' regularly scheduled week on Monday as they start to prepare for the Ezekiel Elliott-less Dallas Cowboys. John, enjoy the weekend, pal.
Hey, you too. Thanks, guys.